Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to the video. Today we're going to be talking about some of my absolute favorite easy to grow cut flowers for beginners. Yeah, shout out to beginners. I see y'all. I still feel like a beginner in a lot of ways. Anyway, these are some of my absolute favorite cut flowers. And best of all, they are easy to grow, especially if you live somewhere that has a really warm summer. These are probably going to thrive for you and give you some nice cut flowers and also attract some pollinators or just add color to your garden or whatever you want to do. I'm not quite sure if I've made a video like this before. I don't think I have, but I wanted to do it again just in case. And we can add some really lovely stuff to this. So I'm going to start out with one that's like totally obvious and easy. And it's like one of the essential, I call them kind of gateway flowers. The main reason I really call them gateway flowers is because they're just, like they're a common thing that you see. Even me in my neighborhood, I've seen these before growing. And honestly, that's like really saying something because nobody grows anything where I live, and it's very seldom that you actually even see a garden. So to see sunflowers, these are definitely one of the flowers that are some of the first things that people start to grow when they, kind of flirt with the idea of like, hey, maybe I should grow some flowers. The main reason that sunflowers are really great is that they thrive in a variety of conditions. In addition to not being really all that picky about the soil and everything else, the seeds are large, they're easy to handle, and they germinate really, really readily. I should mention also that all of these flowers that I'm talking about, you should not sow them until all chance of frost is gone where you live. So these are all frost tender, meaning that the frost will kill them. Anyway, sunflowers, so easy. Direct sow is the way to go if you ask me personally, but you can start them in, soil blocks or trays or something. They would need a bigger, I guess, tray cup. I would use maybe cups if I was going to start them indoors. If you're not planting very many, but I really do think direct sow is the way to go with this. One of the main problems I have with sunflowers, however, is that the cardinal birds know when I plant sunflowers and they will eat every single one. So when you do direct sow these, make sure if you have any cardinals or a lot of bird problems, make sure to go ahead and, cover the row with like maybe a lightweight row cover or like, insect cover, insect barrier, and that might be really helpful. There are so many options when it comes to sunflowers. You can grow a small dwarf sunflower, which are super cute. You can even put those in containers if you don't have the space. You can grow sunflowers that reach 16 feet tall. Those aren't very good for cutting, but you can do it if you want to. I still think they're awesome to look at, and I just enjoy growing them just because they're so tall. Pollenless varieties. I had trouble thinking what it was called. You can get the pollen-free varieties. These varieties don't produce pollen, obviously. Wow, this is really educational. Such a good garden channel. Anyway, they won't produce pollen, so that means that yellow pollen is not going to fall all over the place when you're harvesting flowers. If you are worried about the bees and want the bees to benefit as well from the sunflowers in your garden, don't worry. The pollenless varieties still produce nectar, which the bees also use. The bees seem to love the pollen-free varieties in my yard, so I haven't had a problem with that. The only really drawback to those is that they are not going to produce seeds unless pollen from another type of sunflower is brought over by bees, which is also possible. In terms of colors and shapes and sizes, there are just so many options, and I think there really is an option that will suit most people. So that's one to definitely take into consideration when planning your first flower garden. Up next, of course, is zinnias. Zinnias will always and forever be one of my favorite flowers. They were actually the first flowers that I ever grew. Back when I started gardening, when I first began gardening, I really thought I didn't like sunflowers. The only sunflowers I had seen were sunflowers that were past their prime. They were drooping, the petals were gross. You know what I'm talking about, after they bloom and they're full of seeds and they hang low and you're just like, ugh, why would anybody want that in their garden? those were the only sunflowers I had seen. So I was like strictly anti-sunflower, which is funny saying that now because I absolutely love them. Anyway, the first zinnia that I ever grew, I got a pack of seeds for, I guess it was my vegetable garden. It was called Button Box. Seen these seeds lately. I've actually been looking for them. But button box zinnias are little tiny little things. The um, the blooms are literally the size of like little buttons, and they are absolutely stinking adorable. But I haven't been able to find them at any of the seed places I go to. But zinnias are super easy for first time flower growers. Like the sunflowers, they are pretty forgiving of the poor soil conditions, which is, of course, a definite bonus because as a beginner, you don't really know very much about soil. At least I didn't. Maybe you do. But for the most part, they will thrive in a variety of conditions. And the great part is that there are so many options when it comes to zinnias. The colors, pretty much every color except for blue, I want to say pinks, purples, lavenders, yellows, whites, greens. It's awesome. Different kind of bicolors and more specialty ones like scabiosa flowered zinnias, which are a little bit irritating to me, but perhaps I'll have to make a video about that some other time. There just really are a lot of choices, and I think this is another good one for your first cut flower garden because they're cut and come again. They will bloom and bloom and bloom. As long as you cut them, they will keep blooming until the end of the season as long as the plants are nice and healthy. And they keep really well in a vase. There are just so many good things to say about zinnias. I think they're great. But moving on, up next we have Cosmos. These absolutely thrive in the heavy clay that I have here. Don't know why, but I'm not going to complain about it, especially since the clay can be so just blah to grow something in. There are usually about two types of Cosmos. There's the I'll put it on the screen, type of Cosmos, which are orange. And there's another one, which I'll put on the screen also, which are usually purple, pinks, whites, those kind of colors. The plants are really kind of tall and wiry. The actual foliage of these plants isn't the prettiest, at least I don't think so. And sometimes, you know, the blooms can be a little bit unpredictable as to when they're going to bloom. I haven't ever figured out if they're just like daily dependent or what it is. Sometimes they bloom early in the season for me. Other times they wait till fall and they put on an amazing bloom in fall. It really is one of those things, and it probably varies depending on where you live. But these light and airy looking stems are so pretty to watch sway in the breeze. So they're definitely one to add to this super easy flower garden. As the other ones, you know, these are really just a direct sow. Sprinkle them on the ground. They will take over. A lot of times they volunteer in the garden and reseed themselves. Definitely a bonus if you ask me. So you might want to check those out. Marigolds are another flower that is super easy to grow. And, you know, this one's kind of, I guess, controversial. It's not really controversial. I'm being dramatic. Flowers aren't controversial. But I just say that in that some people like them and some people really don't like them, and those are marigolds. I personally really love marigolds. I love their use in the vegetable garden to deter pests, and I like how they look in cut flower arrangements with nice oranges and yellows and kind of cream colors. However, they do have a kind of unpleasant smell. At least some people find it unpleasant. It personally doesn't really bother me all that much. And I find if you do want to use them in flower arrangements, if you pair them with something like fragrance, say a big bunch of basil foliage, you don't even notice the fact that they smell because you smell all that lovely basil or just whatever you pair it with, or lovely mint. It really is, if the smell bothers you, there really are ways to mask it. Especially if you're, you know, making cut flowers for outdoors, it wouldn't be a problem. I would say maybe if you have a big bouquet of marigolds indoors, you might say, ugh, stinky. But again, it's all up to you, and different people have different tastes. Marigolds can be started indoors really, really easily. They can also be direct sowed out in the garden. very easily. I have them come back as volunteers every year in the yard. It's just an aspect that I really love. The colors are a little bit limited. I noticed actually most of the colors on this list are pretty hot colors, like, you know, red, orange, yellow. I didn't do that on purpose, but it's just how it worked out, I guess. Up next is Amaranth. Amaranth is a grain, technically, but I use it for so many things, especially cut flowers and wreaths and flower arrangements. There's a pretty good variety of color. Usually it's burgundies, dark burgundies. There's also different foliage type amaranths that have really bright, just multicolored leaves that are really can be like total showstoppers. There are what is it? Love Lies Bleeding Amaranth. Is that right? Yes, I always get Love Lies Bleeding and Bleeding Hearts confused. Love Lies Bleeding Amaranth that kind of drapes and hangs. There are, you know, gold hues, there's green, there's just a lot of options. And what I like about Amaranth is they really do provide a lot of texture to the flower arrangements, just breaking up that, you know, single flower forms, just add in a different kind of look when you're arranging your flowers. In addition to that, these will put off multiple blooms. If you cut out the main bloom, they'll keep branching usually and give you a lot of just nice plant material to work with. It's best if you don't start these indoors. They don't really seem to transplant well. You can transplant them, but they kind of, I don't know, it's kind of more trouble than it's worth. These direct sow extremely well, and like the other ones, these come back every year in my garden as volunteers. So I planted some probably 6 years ago now, and I still have volunteers coming back from that original planting 6 years ago. So they really are prolific, and you don't really have to worry. Moving on from things that are like super easy to direct sow and, you know, super just accessible, moving on to things that are a little bit more difficult, but not really. These things, you have the option to sow them in winter or direct sow them, but if you direct sow these, you may not have as much success. So these are some ones for beginners that I think are best if you know, can start them indoors. You can start them in winter sowing containers, which is a great option. Or you can even wait till the weather warms up, wait till the chance of frost is gone, sow these in a seed tray outside, let them germinate, and then transplant them into the garden. For the most part, the seeds of these flowers that I'm talking about now are a little smaller and can get, you know, more easily lost, or just something can happen to interfere with their growth, unless you have a lot of seeds, which in that case you probably can direct sow. I don't know. Again, every garden is different. You kind of have to do the whole trial and error thing for yourself. What works for me might not work for you, and vice versa, all that good stuff. We're all learning here. I'm just a person with a garden, so I guess always take my advice with a grain of salt. Anyhow, first up on this list of things that kind of require more care but are totally worth it is Celosia. Celosia comes in, I think it's 3 types. There's like Celosia cristata, Celosia something else, which is like a plume Celosia, and there's one that's like a feather one. But Celosias are really nice. They work really well for cut flowers. They definitely don't wilt. They're very unique. Some of them are kind of feathery. Some of them look like kind of like brains in a variety of colors, like some kind of like velour brains or something is what I think they kind of look like, which is weird to say. But anyway, if you live somewhere that gets nice and warm in the summertime, these will do pretty well. You want to make sure your soil is well amended for these. These are a little bit less forgiving than things like, you know, Cosmos, but still decently forgiving. Not really essential that you have a super rich bed for these. They seem to do well either way. They also do a little bit of branching once they're cut for cut flowers, so you kind of have at least a somewhat continuous supply of flowers there. Like a lot of the other ones, these colors are really, for the most part, fluorescent and hot and in your face, which I really love. Next is Titania. This is the annual Titania. This is not the perennial Titania. Perennial Titania is often used in permaculture, I believe. It's nitrogen fixing, don't quote me on that, but this is an annual. We're going to use these for some really just bright, vibrant cut flowers in the fall. Late summer to fall is normally when these things are in full bloom. And the hummingbirds absolutely love these things, and they also work great for cut flowers too. You do have to catch these at the right time if you're going to cut them, because if you wait too long, the stems become hollow. You can still cut them for cut flowers, but they don't last as long, and the petals might start to fall off. But these are just so prolific here. Just grow so well here. Here in my yard, zone 7-ish, 6B. I don't really even know what zone I'm in anymore. These things get about 6 to 8 feet tall, which is awesome. They look absolutely gorgeous. I usually plant them up against a house. And you truly can just cut and cut and cut, and they will keep blooming until the frost finally hits. The seeds are larger, but I feel like they tend to get lost in the soil, especially if you plant them when the soil is not warm enough yet. These need warm soil. It is very important that the soil is warm for these. That's one of the reasons I like to start them indoors or start them, elsewhere, and then transplant them in the yard, because I have that full control over, what's going on. Last but not least in this list is Azure Adam. Azure Adam, at least here where I live, grows wild, or there's a form of it that grows wild as a wildflower. The Azure Adam are these just nice blue flowers. You can direct sow these just as the other ones, but the seeds might not have as high of a germination rate as you would like. So that's up to you too. These are great for cut flowers, attracting the pollinators. Lots of pollinators on these all the time. Usually these start blooming around midsummer and bloom all the way through the fall until the first frost hits. There really aren't very many colors of this. There's this kind of reddish one, and there's a kind of a blue one, and that's pretty much it. These are not to be confused with any of the white snake root wildflowers. Those are not the same thing, even though they look similar. These look very similar to some wildflowers that grow wild, and just make sure you're always knowing the difference between your plants. You're knowing what all your plants are. You're keeping everybody that you love safe. I know I say it all the time, but when you're growing these ornamental cut flower plants, you do want to make sure that everybody knows what everything is and that you're staying safe, because, you don't want anybody to get hurt in your garden. That's really about it for this video. I hope that it was somehow helpful. If it was, be sure to subscribe. I would absolutely love to have you. Make sure you hit the bell. If you hit the bell, it tells you immediately when I upload a new video. If you like this one, be sure to share, tell your friends, all that stuff. We're trying to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of this year. I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm going to try my best, and we'll see how far we get. I hope y'all are having an amazing day, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye, guys.